All right, Georgia with what was the final score, Matt? 34 to 20 win. We got a place to be. Make sure you're signing up for our newsletter. I wanted to get this out there. Hey, man, it was a perfectly adequate win for Georgia. It wasn't a great win, but they're just going to have to play better. Well, Carson's got to play better, that's all. It's that simple. I mean, one thing that he said to us after in the postgame was, we didn't get stopped on offense unless he basically said if he didn't mess up, they didn't get stopped on offense, which is basically true. Now, not completely true, but basically true. And you're still scoring 30 points. All it is he's got to play better. Like, it's not like he can't play better. He can. And, this game, it just is such an emotional game for Georgia people. The players, Etienne getting hurt with his ribs. I think he'll be fine for next week. We'll see. But they can't play like this against Ole Miss. They can't play like this against Tennessee or they'll lose. And the margin of error for this team is not as great as it was in these teams on the past. I mean, this team is probably the best team in the country. They just don't like to do that sometimes. The defense is really good. Florida was extremely limited tonight. Legge got hurt, but Legge wouldn't do anything either. He hit the one ball and that was it. I mean, Florida couldn't do hardly anything. This is my 27th time down here. I've seen this show before where the better team comes, doesn't play great, turns it over, whatever you want to call it, and yet they still win. So, no. This post game is always a zoo. I try to do all this in the stadium, but we got to go. But they're really developing this area around here. There's a lot going on. I'll tell you that right now. I don't know what is going on here. But Carson's got to play better, and when he does, there's probably not much stopping this team. I mean, Florida could not do anything on offense. I would argue that Georgia, because of Carson's play, gave them 10 points. And they scored 10 more points. I mean, that was the day. That was it. They had one drive, I think, which was poor Ryan in the background. They had one drive. It just wasn't great. We watched Ohio State, Penn State. It was awful. This was almost as bad. Like, it was just not a good. By the way, this is what it's like at the stadium after games. Almost everywhere, but here particularly, it's just a madhouse. But we've got places to go. The run game, it was there. Etienne getting hurt, that hurt them. Cash Jones, listen, man, people are going to remember that run. It wasn't a run. People are going to remember that run and catch for the rest of Cash Jones' life. That was shockingly good. And I wouldn't say it changed the game, but it nailed down that Georgia was going to win the game. They had so many opportunities to push it to 14 points and it didn't happen. So, I don't know, man. There were a lot of opportunities for this game to be over. Even, I wouldn't say in the first half. I mean, Gators played fine on defense. But Georgia has got to play to its potential each week or it will lose. Now, we're watching right now A&M and Carolina are in a dogfight. I would not be surprised if Carolina won that game. I don't know what's going on with Tennessee. I don't know what's going on with Clemson. I think Clemson was struggling a little bit. I don't know with a lot. But, Oregon, did Oregon cover, Matt?
I think so.
Yeah, so Oregon's playing better than anyone else. But when Georgia has all of their pieces, they're a really, really good team. They can win the national championship. I don't know if they'll be the betting favorite after today, but there's the only thing Georgia has to fear is itself, to borrow a phrase from FDR. I mean, that's it. Everything else from this team, other people can't beat them. I mean, it's just about beating themselves, in my view. That's all it is. I can't turn around. They've got to become more consistent. Carson had 3 picks. He could have had 5. The first throw, I see his eyes. They get real big when he sees something. I've seen his eyes get real big, and he throws picks twice this season, once with State and once here. And I'm not saying it like I know, I'm just pointing that out as an observation. So it may be that he's trying to, do too much in that moment. He understands it. He understands it. I think the idea that he doesn't get it or something like that, no, he understands it. And I want to say this too. We see this at night too. A lot of Jacksonville could not be happier to have this game here. The other thing I want to say too is, if you're quarterback at Georgia, you go through this crucible. This is just what it is. In Georgia, this game is such a big game. And let's go across and then across. This is such a big game. Everybody, Stetson played like shit down here. Aaron definitely played like shit down here a lot. And so I just, Carson's got to play better. That's the biggest thing. If he plays better, they win going away. Otherwise, you had them in a knife fight with a team that doesn't have a quarterback. It was bad, that part. Excuse us. Excuse me. Hey, we're good. Matt, you want to go here? I don't know what that was. A bunch of sad gators. But the potential of this team is great and everything, but they got to live up to it probably just a little bit more than they are. And they're not. The defense is good, man. The defense plays well. Florida just basically said, hey, look, we're just going to run, and that's what we're going to do. And they were not super effective. They were effective enough running, but they weren't running on Georgia necessarily, except a drive or something like that. Did they have 250 yards total?
Around there, maybe 240.
It wasn't great. It wasn't great, but they didn't have a quarterback. So, it was a little bit like you're playing at a wounded duck. And, then that can be a little bit dangerous too sometimes, because you're like, well, we're just going to stuff the run. And the quarterback made like 2 plays. And, those 2 plays were enough to get them to where the game was tied with like 4 minutes to go. This guy's just coming on out. It's all right. You might get the wig wag though. Let's see about that. Maybe not. But anyway, it was an unsatisfying 14-point win over your arch rival. That's what it was. It wasn't better. It wasn't worse. It just was what it was. And, Florida's gotten better. But they're not Georgia. They're not. They hung with them. I never thought Georgia would be in a position to lose the game. But that's me. And they got to play better, man. Ole Miss scored like 100 today against Arkansas. But a lot of people this season in the SEC, they're just up and down. I watched Ole Miss last week against Oklahoma. They looked bad, and I guess today they looked really good. I don't know. It's perplexing. Kirby after the game was.
Where are we going?
Well, you got the "where are we going" question. I have heard that one before. Every post game it's like this in Jacksonville. This is actually not that bad. But, Kirby after the game was, he was both confirming that Carson has to play better and, started defending him too. But he does, man. He can't throw it late over the middle. He threw it into a double team. That resulted in a pick. And those were deep. They were driving the ball in both those cases at the beginning of the game. Georgia's got everything they need. Georgia's got everything they need to get where they want to go. They've got it all. Now, they didn't have Etienne running it tonight, so that was problematic. They've got a very good quarterback. They've got an offensive line that, is pretty good protecting the passer, that's for sure. They've got skilled players that are good, not maybe AJ Green or Dominic. Dominic Lovett plays really well sometimes. I thought Arian Smith, that one play from Carson to Arian, that was a big play. That third down, I'd have to go back and watch the game, but I mean, there were some big moments in that game. And it seems like when Carson's, back is against the wall completely is when he plays the best. It was just an unsatisfying, I should say, win over your arch rival. Make sure you're checking out Red Zone when you're in Athens for all of your, whatever, man. Scott and Mindy have been great for us, and I can't thank them enough for their help and support. They're just good people anyway. But Georgia's going to have 2 really huge games, and that's the other thing, man. Carson was talking about the big games in Georgia. This is the whole reason you come to Georgia, and he's right. And it's you can't be nervous for the moment. You just can't. And when Georgia needed that drive, they had that drive. And I'd get that out first. When they needed the drive, they had the drive. They got the drive from Carson. It was a good drive. The throw to Arian Smith. The 3 and outs in the fourth quarter, not ideal is the way I would put it. Not ideal at all. But they got the win, and it's what it was. It wasn't great. It wasn't great, but the win over State wasn't great either. And we saw what they did a week after that when they played Texas. Comments?
The win over Auburn wasn't great either. This is what this is with this team. Every game's going to be a battle. Every game's going to be different. Style points are over. It's win and move on to the next week. We're at that point in the season. Just win the game, try to play better next week, and they're going to have to do that against the Rebels.
Ryan, quickly.
Look, they're beating teams while not playing well on offense. There's no other way to put it. When they start putting together a complete game on offense, they're going to crush people. That's what I got to say.
These guys got some stuff to deal with real quick. I'm going to stick with you a little bit longer. Look, it wasn't great, but there were offensive. Listen, it wasn't great. Carson having 3 turnovers. Other than that, it wasn't the end of the game either, or end of the world either. I mean, it was fine, but it wasn't, one of these situations where you're like, oh man, these guys are winning it no matter what. No, they got some work to do. They got some work to do for sure.